So obviously we're in a crap storm, to say the least, and now we're getting information that the people that were selected to represent you knew this large crap storm was coming, and what did they do? Did they warn you? Did they tell you to be prepared? No. They sold you out and got rich off of it. We're going to be talking about that, plus a lot more. Of course, joined by Tim Pashot, that's going to be talking about all the latest news in the stock market. There's a lot of other crazy news developing with the Federal Reserve, but we're just going to get right into some of the latest updates here on this independent media organization that, of course, is a lot different than the mainstream media that is prioritizing their absolute social justice warrior ideology over common sense. As the New York Times just deleted the word Wuhan from its coronavirus tracking map. I mean, this is just absolutely insane that during this insane time where all hands are on deck, where there's so much updates, I'm having a hard time updating everyone about what's happening. They prioritize this. I mean, you got to be freaking kidding me. And of course, if you go to New York Times, they have articles. You need to know this latest information about this, and this. And then you go on there, it's like, oh, you got to pay us if you want to see this again. And then we get scrutinized here as independent media. But that's a whole nother story. But again, what we're in for is a long haul of this insanity, as we've been telling you, as we've been warning you to be prepared. And obviously, with just more numbers going up of coronavirus, people testing positive for it, of course, we're going to have more restrictions from the government, and that's what we have today, as Donald Trump just announced that he will close the southern border between the United States and Mexico. Only for essential travel will people be able to go back and forth, but everything else, tourism, regular life, has stopped. The New York Governor Cuomo also announced that this is going to be going on for months, and he just decided to close all non-essential businesses, ordering 100% of workers to stay home. This, as of course, there's another article here that is showing, allegedly from a leaked U.S. government report, that this pandemic could last 18 months or longer, as of course the government is not equipped, as medical professionals are not equipped with the supplies to handle this, and they are even expecting multiple waves of this pandemic to come. So yes, this is probably going to be lasting a very long time, especially the more people don't take this seriously. Again, we've been taking this seriously. We've been getting some flack because we have been warning people, but you look at our reporting from this, especially on the main We Are Change channel, we've been pretty dead on accurate, especially with our projections, especially with the way we've been seeing it, and the level of incompetency, the level of government funneling, the government of not taking this seriously, making mistakes, having red tape standing in the way of helping people is just troubling to say the least, but signals of a worse time ahead, and there's no denying that, as New York is now seen as the most drastic state to take orders with their limitations, as of course there are a total of now 7,102 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. There's probably way more, as I know a lot of people in this city here with me that cannot get tested. California has followed with similar orders, with their governor calling all 40 million citizens living there and non-citizens to stay home. And they are saying that they have the strictest lockdown, as if there's some kind of measuring war between the states. It doesn't matter. But what does matter is, again, people getting their information out there, staying calm, being prepared, and being ready for this. The State Department is also telling all Americans to come home immediately. And, of course, many people are expecting a full, total shutdown of all travel very soon. And that's going to happen here, especially the more people don't take this seriously, because the government is not taking it seriously. Some medical professionals aren't even taking this seriously. And again, I can't stress this enough. This is serious, as new studies are coming in showing that 80% of coronavirus patients only get mild symptoms like a cough and a fever. Most recover quickly, but again, the infection is spread quickly. With those infections spreading quickly, more people get affected, and people who don't have the luxury of having a great immune system, don't have the luxury of having, youth who don't have the luxury of having the best health and wellness, well, they pay the ultimate consequences of it. And of course, that gives government more of an excuse to intervene. Again, my main thesis here is don't let the government intervene by being responsible for yourself. The more people get hurt, the more tragic of a situation, the more of an excuse government will have to come in and to have more control of your life. We don't want that. We want responsibility. We're trying to push that. We've been telling you that from the very beginning. And I don't know what else to tell you from there. Now, let's get into this latest senator news, Tim, because this is pretty eye-opening. I mean, there's now 4 senators. The news came out slowly. It was trickling in that one senator did this, then there was 2, there was 3, there was 4. There's probably way more than 4. But the news is that 4 senators specifically tied into the Senate Intelligence Committee meeting were at this meeting. We're told ish is about to hit the fan. It's going to get really bad here. And what do? Instead of like preparing their districts and constituents and making sure there's actual medical supplies, which there's not enough of, what did they do? They sold millions of their stock. Tim, how does this work? I mean, give us the background information for anyone who's not into the whole economic lingo. What just happened here?
Yeah, so I mean, and not only, you've also have to remember that not only were they not helping people out, they're telling them not to buy masks, and you only need like 2 days of food, and don't panic. And so we had 4 senators who dumped a whole bunch of stock, and let me go pull it up right here up on screen. So revealed 4 senators dumped millions in stocks while Capitol Hill was being briefed on the coronavirus threat, but before markets started tanking. Richard Byrd, head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which was directly briefed on coronavirus, sold up to $1.7 million in stock between January and February. Dianne Feinstein on the same committee sold up to $6 million in the same period. And I believe that her husband, it was either her or I forgot the other, or one of the other California senators out there who, basically their husband, goes in, buys all the different post offices and gets it for dirt cheap and then sells it back. All this crazy insider stuff going on. Then we have, of course, Kelly Loeffler on the Senate Health Committee, sold up to $3.1 million in stock starting on the day her committee was briefed by the CDC. How convenient. And then James Inhofe sold up to $400,000 in stocks, including real estate, all on January 27th. So, yeah, there is stuff that's supposed to stop this. There was a Stock Act that we're reading right now on screen, and that stands for Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act. But if you actually kind of read into the entire bill, it's sort of actually legalized it. So, of course, it's one of those same typical type things where the bill does the opposite of what it's supposed to do. And then we have an article where it says Senator Kelly Loeffler dumped millions of stock after coronavirus briefing. And basically, she was told, hey, a lot of things are not going to be going very well. And then, as you pointed out, instead of briefing people, she decided that the best thing to do would be run home, tell her stock advisor to go dump a bunch of stock. Now, she also did purchase some stock, and one of those stocks that she purchased, here we go, one of Loeffler's 2 purchases was stock worth between $100,000 and $250,000 in Citrex, a technology company that offers telenetworking software and which has seen a small bump in stock price since she bought it. So it's sort of like a Zoom type technology or Skype technology. And, how crazy is that? Now, their defense is investment decisions are made by multiple third-party advisors without my or my husband's knowledge or consent. And so, that could be the case. I did go ahead and bought, put options for my clients in January, and, my clients don't necessarily, they know what I'm doing, but I have discretionary trading authority. So when it comes to, could that potentially happen? That it could happen, but it's like, on the same day, and then you're buying the stock it's, maybe she then told the advisor that. So who knows? I'm never really one to give these guys, any benefit of the doubt when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Tim. They're criminals. They're mafiosos. This is one sign of a mafioso. All you have to do if you're, a member of Congress or a representative, you get information that's secret, that's supposed to be classified, that no one else is supposed to get. How are these people still allowed to have stocks? How are these people still allowed to trade? How are these people still allowed to make money? Because, again, time and time again, this is not the first time that this happened. There's been senators and congressmen caught doing this and manipulating the stocks. Again, all it has to do is, send a secret, message to your trader. Be like, hey, make this move. This is happening here. And bada bing, bada boom. They get away with just making money and saving their money. Meanwhile, everyone else doesn't have this luxury. Meanwhile, everyone else is suffering. And this just shows you just to the level of criminality, behavior that we're seeing from our government. Dianne Feinstein, $6 million in stock. I mean, come on. I mean, I know these people are well established. I know these people are very rich, but there's too many coincidences here just to make this kind of an accident. I definitely don't want to give these people any benefit of the doubt because, again, it's all just criminals, running the hen house here, to say the least. And talking about criminals running the hen house, there's also a lot of interesting news happening with the Federal Reserve as well, right, Tim?
Oh, is there ever? And then we are pulling up on screen. There's some other articles here, talking about Dianne Feinstein, but we'll do that for another time. But, the Fed right now is embarking on a super dangerous mission where essentially, they are in danger of potentially owning everything. And, we had, our forefathers were even saying things like, if you ever allow a private central bank to issue the currency and credit of our nation, first by inflation, then by deflation, we're going to be homeless on the continent our forefathers conquered. What they meant by that is that these guys are going in there and they are literally just buying up assets. So they never had that money to begin with. They're taking their keyboard, they're making digits out of thin air, and then they use those digits and buy up real assets. So in this case, they're going to probably start buying. They're talking about buying actual corporations, their stock, and so the largest lien holder of basically the hierarchy is someone that owns bonds. So essentially, you're having the Federal Reserve coming in and, basically, I don't want to say nationalizing because it's a private central bank, but they're coming in and starting to own everything. Just in the past week, we've seen such unprecedented actions. We've seen the reserve requirement, as one of our listeners pointed out the other day, has been set down to zero. So banks don't even have to hold on to any of your money anymore. They don't have to pay you any interest. That's gone back down to 0%. They are taking stock as collateral to then lending out against it. So essentially companies can then give them, or banks can then give them stock, even though that stock loses a bunch of money, they get the cash. So in essence, it's a end run around buying stock. But, has this helped out the stock market? Let's take a look. We've got it here up on screen. The median U.S. stock is now down 50% from its highs as world loses 25 trillion in a month. So it's important to distinguish, average and median. And a lot of times what we talk about is what the Dow Jones is doing. And so today the Dow Jones is hovering right around 20,000. It's just underneath at 19,978. So down about 110 points for the day. So all this stuff, to try to put Humpty Dumpty back together again isn't really even working. And, and as one of your points, out before, you had mentioned that, people are calling this a Chinese virus. Well, Kyle Bass is a pretty famous wealth manager. And of course, instead of talking about, the brilliant investing points he's talking about, they're talking about the fact that he said Chinese virus on CNBC, as opposed to saying that, now is a good time to come in if you've got some value stocks. Because what's happened the past several years is that no one cared about value stocks. They were all just throwing money at, whatever the highest, high flyers are. And speaking of high flyers, we have on screen, U.S. airlines spent 96% of free cash flow on buybacks. And so this is actually really crazy. So the biggest U.S. airline spent 96% of free cash flow. Basically, that's extra money coming in. So, let's say you're a household and you had an extra $1,000 coming in, and you go and use that to, let's say if you were a stock, you'd go and buy up your own stock. But, no one would do that in real life. But anyways, if you are the airlines, particularly American Airlines Group, which is not shown in the chart, but if it is included in these overall figures, they led the pack with a negative cumulative free cash flow during the decade, while it repurchased more than 12.5 billion of its shares. United Airline Holdings used 80% of its free cash flow on buybacks, while the S&P 500 index as a whole allocated about 50% for the purpose. As the industry reels under the weight of coronavirus outbreak, corporate leaders are seeking federal assistance to ease the burden. So these buybacks, as I've mentioned a few times before, what they're doing is, let's say you used to have 1 million shares outstanding, use your money to then buy back shares. Now you have 900,000 shares outstanding. Even if you make the same amount of money, let's say you make $1 million, you've got 1 million shares, you're earning $1 per share. Now you buy back 10% of your shares. Well, now you're earning $1.10 per share, which then increases your share price, all things considered equal. And then these big CEOs, most of their compensation has to deal with stock options, and then they get really rich, and then so do the hedge funds and all the other people that bought into them. And meanwhile, the people continually keep getting screwed, and we are the ones who have to deal with all of this socialism. But what's going on now? AOC is complaining about this, and rightly so. But where is she talking about, the fact that this is actual fascism? This is actual, what do you want to call this, fascism or socialism? When you have the government, coming in, and we've got the Treasury talking about buying stock as well. So let me try to find find that article. But yeah, here we got on screen right now, and this is just way too much information to take in. And we've got Bernanke and Yellen. Of course, I like to refer to him as Osama Ben Bernanke, but we've got Bernanke and Yellen suggest Fed should start moving to buy corporate debt. So that is, I mean, I guess technically it's not fascism because it's not the actual, they're not part of the government technically. So, but anyways, whether it's fascism or socialism or whatever one of these isms, it all boils down to a small amount of people controlling everybody. But here's the article I wanted to reference. Trump gives nod to no buyback contingency for bailed out companies. President Trump gave a nod to U.S. taking an equity stake in companies which received coronavirus-related taxpayer bailouts, with the condition that they be prohibited from conducting stock buybacks or increasing executive bonuses. We don't want that, Trump said during today's briefing. Some companies, as you know, did stock buybacks. It's very hard to tell them not to, but I would tell them not to. And so Trump goes on to say, he's fine with aid conditions on buybacks and bonuses. He doesn't want virus aid to go to stock buybacks and bonuses. Doesn't want to pick winners and losers. Usually they only pick losers. And then Trump supports U.S. taking equity stake in companies, aka the Treasury. Is going to start owning stocks. And then, as part of this, stimulus program, they're also, sort of finalize what's going to be going on underneath these checks sending out to people. So McConnell proposes $1,200 per person, $2,400 per couple under U.S. Coronavirus relief package. And as we go on over here, I believe there was some limits, and actually maybe this article doesn't go on to say that, but I believe, what it was going to be is if you didn't have any federal tax liability, it was going to be $600. If you did have federal tax liability, it was going to be, I believe it was $1,200 per person, and then another $500 per child. And then there were some limits. And then I believe if you make more than, it was somewhere between $75,000 and $99,000 as an individual, you're phased out. And then as a couple, if you make between $150,000 and I think $195,000-ish, you're going to be phased out as well. But, a lot of these details are still rolling in. They're constantly changing. And so, we are, going to keep you up to date on this as things change. But, one of the changing things is Bank of America says the recession is already here. Jobs will be lost. Wealth will be destroyed. Somebody better let Steve Mnuchin know that, because here we have, half the, the median stock price is down 50%, just an absolute bloodbath going on. Another article here from Vanity Fair, all hell is about to break loose. Could Wall Street's coronavirus tsunami get worse? And here's the thing is there was a gigantic bubble on a ton of different fronts, and this was going to blow up no matter what. And so eventually, this was a gigantic pin to pop a gigantic bubble. And this only needed a little pin to pop. And maybe if it was a little pin, maybe they could put Humpty Dumpty back together again on all this. But this was such a big pin, Luke, that I don't think there's really anything they can do to stop this. And one of the things they're doing, and who knows if it is to stop this, but the New York Stock Exchange kicks humans out, moving temporarily to fully electronic trading. Now, I mean, it basically is already fully electronic anyways. And so here they say, to go fully electronic trading beginning on Monday, March 23rd. The decision to temporarily close the trading floors represents a precautionary step. New York Stock Exchange trading floors to provide unique value to issuers and investors, but our markets are fully capable of operating in an all-electronic fashion to serve all participants, and we will proceed in that manner until we can reopen our trading floors to our members, said Stacey Cunningham, president of the New York Stock Exchange. And then, it was a historic day yesterday. Fed to buy a record $107 billion in securities today alone as the Fed balance sheet explodes. And there we see on screen just like that hockey stick J-curve. And this is, in my opinion, only the very beginning of this. Now, the QE2, I think, was only like $84 billion. So literally yesterday, we launched more than what QE2 was in all of totality. And we did a thing yesterday where we talked about the 60-40 portfolio. So 60% stocks, 40% bonds. It's supposed to weather the storm during these types of crises. And 2 days ago, it moved. It was a negative 15% move, which that was the largest in history. And we said that was 8 standard deviations away. And I didn't have the math at the time. Well, Wikipedia only goes out to 7 standard deviations. And that was a once in over a billion year chance of something happening. And it gave a long equation to figure out what the one for 8 is. So I don't have the time to figure that one out. But if someone wanted to drop it down in the comments of how many billions of years we would need to see that one, I think that would be really great. And then the last thing I want to point out here is, and this came from actually one of my clients who is an accountant, sent me this from the Wall Street Journal today, and it's FDIC chairman asked for accounting policy changes due to coronavirus. And so you've got the FDIC Insurance Corp on Thursday urged an accounting rule maker to make delays or exceptions to certain accounting rules to help financial institutions tackle the fallout from the coronavirus. And so they're going to give large public lenders the option, aka the banks, to defer implementing a new rule on expected future credit losses. And this is how the Federal Reserve operates as well. I mean, they made themselves so they technically can't go bankrupt. But if you have a bank that can just issue money out of thin air, and now the banks don't even have to hold on to your money. So the Federal Reserve issues money out of thin air. They're buying up corporations. They're probably going to start buying up the actual stocks. And by corporations, I mean their debt. And so, there's actually talks of them how they're going to start buying municipal bonds as well. And I don't see how this is going to end well. And this is, the road to fascism right now. And for me, it's not about the coronavirus. It's about all the other crap they're sticking in here. And to me, this is, one of the most important issues in the world. And it's something a lot of people are overlooking. And, it's just important that we keep exposing this, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you see a major financial crisis, you usually see an exponential boom in kind of radical ideologies afterwards. That's exactly what you saw during the Great Depression and other kind of major economic crises that happened. Really good information. And again, just to remind people, what the Fed's doing, they're doing emergency moves right now. I mean, they're ramping up their bond buying, but they're indicating even a larger purchase. They're indicating more direct involvement here. And I have to, call out some of the kind of right wingers here that for them, the word socialism was this big boogeyman. Like they heard socialism. Oh, that was their big war crime. Socialism, bad. I mean, what do you think is happening now? And then with AOC that you brought up here, she was recently, talking about how horrible it is for the airlines to be buying back their own stocks and be asking for a bailout without selling their stocks. If AOC, I believe this, if AOC had a proper sit down and told about what the Federal Reserve was doing, she would lay an egg. Her mind would blow up. She'd go crazy. I hope so. Or she would just be a pandering politician and not care and just kind of push this thing. But hopeful thinking. That's it from there. Tim, anything else you want to say, or should we just start working on the next video?
No, I think we should wrap it up. But just so much crazy stuff going on.
Yeah. And it's not going to stop. Crazy is the new normal. Stay tuned for more as we break it down for you here on Change the News channel.